But welcome to everybody who's joining us for our another one of our spring training webinars. To start out with, if anyone doesn't know me, my name is Justin Lee, Deputy Director here at the League. Today we're going to be covering general government things, things that we affectionately call lawyer boy issues, covered by our Legal Director, Jared Tingey, and a few other things that I'll jump in on some elections and some other issues. The question was asked, will we post these online? The answer is yes. If you are not following us on YouTube, you can go follow us on our YouTube channel, the best channel on all of YouTube. If you want to see our previous trainings or LPC or anything, that's where we're posting all of those. So we will take questions in the chat. We do have a lot to get through, so we will take some questions as we're going, but then we may take some time at the end, depending how much time there is, to go answer any questions about anything that we've covered. So as always, we've got a bill tracker on here if you want to go back and look at the bills that we tracked and see where everything landed. That's on there. But with that, Jared, I'm going to turn it over to you. Oh, no, I'm not, because I'm going to cover this part. I almost forgot. All right, so we've already done some spring trainings. We're going to do one more spring training next week, April 9th. This is going to be our spring training on land use part 2. Last week, we covered a lot of things on land use, but some of those bills are so big, including 368, that we're going to spend a lot of time going through that again. So land use part 2, Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, but particularly focusing on HB 368 and all the different components of that bill.
That is correct.
Then we've got our mid-year conference coming up April 17th and 18th down in St. George. Hope to see many of you there. And then May 7th through the 9th, APA Spring Conference in Logan, another chance. As always, we are happy to do trainings throughout the year, to do webinars, to answer questions. So don't hesitate to reach out. As we look at doing our wrap-up documents and a few other things, we want to make sure that we're covering what you need. So please let us know. So this year we had more bills and more problems. 959 bills were introduced, which is 134 more bills than the prior 9-year average. So if it feels like we are seeing more legislation, it is because we are in fact seeing more legislation. On top of that, 1,110 substitutes and amendments adopted. So that's not just the substitutes and amendments that were drafted, that's the number that were adopted. So more substitutes and amendments adopted than even bills introduced. So it's really doubling the number of bills in some ways that we're dealing with there, since many of them have substantive and substantial changes. We tracked 279 bills this last year, which is 61 more bills than the prior 3-year average. And there were 582 bills that ultimately passed, which is 9 fewer than last year, but it is still the second highest number of bills that have ever passed. So one of the questions we get a lot is why do we engage on bills that we don't like? Why don't we just say no and fight against them? And this answers some of that. Most bills that fail procedurally. That means 30% of all bills that fail are not failing because of an up or down vote. They're failing because they get left on the board. They just get held in the committee, things like that. That being said, 90.3% of bills that go to a committee advance out of that committee, which means we have less than a 10% chance of killing a bill if it actually gets into committee. And finally, only 2.5% of bills fail when they actually come to floor votes. So if you get a bill to the floor, you've got a very, very good chance, not quite 100% chance, but a 97% chance plus of getting that bill passed once it gets there. That also speaks against the number of amendments and the substitutions that we see. The trend has really been for folks to work together, for people to work with sponsors to get bills in a better place, rather than shooting those bills down. So one of the reasons that we keep engaging on bills, and we're going to cover a lot of the bills that we've engaged on today, there are plenty of what we'll say bills that we don't like that pass, but a lot of them, and I would say the vast majority of them, end up in a better place, at least, than when they started. And now with that, Jared, I will kick it over to you to jump into the bills.
Sounds good. Thank you. Jared Tingey, I'm the legal director. I've been called many other things, though, too, other than lawyer boy. So we are going to start with SB 277. This was Senator McKell's bill. What this does primarily is replaces the State Records Committee with a director who is an administrative law judge. They are appointed by the governor to a 4-year term, and so they do have legal training as opposed to what was the State Records Committee. Now they will have training on records law and how to deal with that. There will be a report provided to the committee annually on efficiency and status. There also is a periodic review process that happens every 2 years, looking at what the efficiency, how things are going, any complaints, things like that in that relation to the performance of the director. Basically, everything else stayed the same. The balancing test is still included within the code. The processing times are the same. The fee provisions, the authority, all of that are the same as it was before SB 277. So we, on this one, we pushed and really supported. We think that it's a positive step in the right direction to have an administrative law judge interpreting code and making those decisions. So that is SB 277. SB 277. This is HB 444. In relation to also records, we have, this was from Representative Moss, data privacy amendments. What this bill is a cleanup from HB 491 from last year. There were a lot of problems, and frankly, there still are issues that we are working through, but by and large, in a lot better place than it was last year. So a couple of the requirements here, so there's 4 slides on this because I wanted to cover quite a bit of the technical nature of things that are going to be coming up, and that if they haven't already been done, that your city and town needs to do. So the first is designating your chief administrative officer and having your chief administrative officer appoint your records officers, and all of those names need to go to the state archives. Now, this is something, a cleanup that will be done over the interim, is that chief administrative officer is actually not need to be the same individual as your chief administrative officer for the city. This chief administrative officer is only in regards to the individual that has the responsibility to make sure all of these responsibilities in the code are taken care of as it relates to records. So chief administrative officer does not necessarily mean your chief administrative officer, as we all might know your CAO as. So the next thing that is important here is the privacy practices report. Now, this report needs to be done by December 31st, 2025. As of now, you just need to make the report. The report does not need to be sent to the Division of the Office of Data Privacy. It is just that you need to make this report, so if the state auditor, privacy auditor does come in, that they've got that, or the Office of Data Privacy comes in, they've got this information. So just kind of going down these bullet points: organizational, technical, administrative, and physical safeguards designed to protect personal data. Policies and procedures related to the acquisition, use, storage, sharing, retention, and disposal of personal data. Practice of providing notice to an individual regarding their individual privacy rights. And for those processing activities that were in place before May 7th, 2025. Those you need to identify any of those non-compliant processing activities, document what those are, and then prepare a strategy to be in compliance by July 1st, 2027. So all of those processing activities that occurred before then will, that there's some leeway in making sure that we fix those, but we move forward in the right direction. The next thing is noticing. If it is a public record under GRAMA, all you need is a statement that the data may be available to the public on any of the forms, or as you can see here, if it's you can also post that in another place and post the QR code or the link to those notices online. If it is not a public record under GRAMA, the noticing must describe all intended purposes and uses of the data, consequences for refusing to provide the personal data, and classes of persons and governmental entities that you share that data with. You also need to include in that notice what record series that the data would be included within. Now there is one exception. There are a few exceptions to that. Like I said, you can post the public notice on the municipality's website, or if you don't have one, you can post it on the public notice website. If it serves a public safety interest and produces a public benefit that is greater to or equal to the potential impact on a person's privacy interest. Now, what does that mean? So there was a lot of negotiations that happened in relation to, well, what if the police department stops someone, arrests someone? How are they going to give individuals notice? It seemed a little bit silly. So we negotiated this, that if it is involving a safety exception, which in the code includes like a provision of emergency services, law enforcement body and dash cam recordings, security camera monitoring, ambulance and emergency medical services, and 911 emergency communications. So all of those actions have already been determined to be in the public benefit that's greater to or equal than a person's privacy interest. So that is kind of the noticing requirements. You can, as far as the posting of that notice, where do you put it? It must be in a prominent place where the governmental entity collects the data. It has to be on the actual form collecting the data, or it can be on the form as a link or a QR code that links to the electronic version of a privacy notice. So it can be done any of those ways. My recommendation would be so you have one privacy notice and you don't have to be attaching it to every new form. You can put that all in one place online and then make sure that you've got a QR code or a link to that privacy notice somewhere on your website that it links to it, and folks can go to that and see what the privacy notice is. So that is in relation to noticing. Each year, you will be required to do an annual training of the current and new employees. The new employees have to have the training 30 days, no more than 30 days after the new hire. This training is going to be provided by the Office of Data Privacy, and will need to, and they will be they will be taking the training and disseminating that. I am not sure when that will actually happen. The code says that they've got to have it done before May 7th. I don't know when we'll see that. So we will monitor that, but make sure you look for those on the Office of Data Privacy. A change from last year is that contractors no longer need to take that privacy training. It still is in there that contractors still are obligated to abide by Utah privacy data laws, but there isn't any obligation on the municipality to go and enforce that. So we felt like it was up to the contractors at that point, and then lastly, on the contractors' point, they are required to participate in the same training, but are only required to do so after July 1st, 2026. This was a negotiated point to be able to come back and look at this during interim. Many of you have a myriad of different software companies that you use or other companies, and to have all of them accept to take this privacy training is just almost impossible, and will make contractors no longer want to do business with the city. So that will be looked at over the interim. It's something that, unless all of the contractors are included within, say, the state procurement policy, and that they've negotiated as a statewide vendor, then we would push back on that. So it does add one member to the Privacy Commission representing cities. There is no need to notify individuals of the breaches of data classified as public, so long as the notice is put on your website. There are privacy policy requirements that you'll need to look at there, a myriad of them, but basically they're the same as has been in other sections of code. So generally speaking, you shouldn't need to change much there. It does permit disciplinary action such as suspension or termination against employees for not following this data privacy code. And then the last slide here talks about exemptions and exceptions. So you can file an application to request a exemption from these code requirements, or an exception from these, or I should say exemption or extension. That should have been extension on the time. So the application has to show you have to identify the specific duty you want to be exempted or the extension of time, and include the justification. Now that report goes to the next Privacy Board Commission and is also reported to the state privacy auditor. And so they will have that information, but that is there that you can make that application through the state Office of Data Privacy. Let's see. Do you want to do this?
Yeah, I can cover this one. Yeah, so this is HB 504, Financial and Conflict of Interest Disclosures. This bill is fairly simple in what it does, but particularly for the elections coming up is something everyone needs to be aware of. You remember last year, and really this year, elected officials had to file a conflict of interest disclosure form. What this does is that extends that form to not just sitting elected officials, but anyone that is running for a municipal office. So it is not required for a candidate. If they are an incumbent and they've already filed the form earlier in the year, they can simply verify the information is current. They can update it if they need to. but those conflict of interest forms must be displayed online. It requires candidates looking to fill a midterm vacancy. So if you have a vacancy on your council or for mayor, then they will also have to file a conflict of interest disclosure form 3 days before the meeting where candidates are interviewed. Now, this applies to counties, local school boards, special districts, and this is something that's already been in place for years for legislative and statewide offices. The quick thing I'd like to say is it's a complex form. There's a lot on there. I would make sure for city and town recorders and clerks to provide the forward to candidates. Make sure it's online or that it's available before you get to that declaration of candidacy period. It's going to take maybe some time for people to find some of this information. So I would just suggest that gets out there in advance. But it's something that this year everyone's going to have to fill out when they're declaring candidacy, or for incumbents who may have already filled it out earlier in the year. They will need to verify that the information is correct. So that's what this one is. We'll talk about this. We're going to be meeting with these city recorders and clerks next week at their conference, and we'll talk about this a bit more, but just want to make sure that is on everyone's radar.
Thank you, Justin. The next one here I'll take is HB 198. This is Representative Val Peterson. This is the billboard bill. We're going to talk about two things. The first is if there is widening and reconstruction where the sign actually needs to be moved due to the road reconstruction, and then we'll also talk about the view or readability of the sign. And there's different scenarios of what was the old law and what is the new law. So the first thing here is widening and reconstruction. Under the old law, the billboard company could move it to the same property and adjacent property, or 1 mile from the current location on either side of the same highway. Now that's an interstate. That would mean that it could be in another city technically, and the state highway was a 1/2 mile from the current location. It also allowed for mutually agreed upon location. The new law changes a few things in relation to the distance and where it can be related. So as it relates to interstate highways, they now can put it anywhere within the same city, along the same highway on either side. For a state highway, it's within 1 mile from and within the same municipality. So it confines it to the same municipality, but increases in two different ways the relocated sign moving from where it was to where it will go. It also allows for another municipality to agree to agree to any additional. If they want to have that sign in their city, they can agree to that, and it can move to a different city, but they have to agree to it. The next one here is view or readability of a sign. So say if there's a structure that needs to be put up that obstructs that readability or view of the sign, under the old law, any interstate, federal, and state highways, they could adjust the height of the sign or move it to a place 500 feet from its prior location if it was in a commercial or industrial zone. What this does is it splits it up into the same available moving of the sign as was the widening and reconstruction. So under federal highways, either side of the same highway within the same municipality, if it's in a commercial or industrial zone, the state highway is again to 1 mile of its prior location, again within the same municipality. Moving on to HB 77, flag display amendments. And I should say this: if there are questions that come up that one of the staff has not taken care of, then I can address those at the end in the chat. So feel free to put those. If they're not answered, we'll take care of them at the end. So this HB 77 flag display amendments is about flags and what flags you can raise on government property. And it also addresses schools, but for our purposes here, you cannot display a flag on your government property unless it's on the list of exempted flags. And you can go and look at that, see whether the flag that you want to put up would qualify underneath those flags. The state auditor, as far as enforcement goes, is the one that ensures compliance and imposes those fines. They provide a cure period no longer than 30 days, and if you don't comply within the cure period that they've decided, then it's $500 per violation per day. So if you've got multiple flags up, then it would be expensive. Now we oppose this primarily because of the constitutional concerns that it raised for us. There are different rights of governmental entities that we have that this would infringe upon. And we believe that there are constitutional concerns with this. Nevertheless, it passed and it is law, and until that's challenged, it will remain in play and in force. The next one here is municipal and county zoning amendments. This talks about short-term rentals. So what this bill attempts to do is clear up the prior language on short-term rentals that was a little bit confusing. And so some of you may have already been operating under this framework, but now there's a little bit more clarity. So it allows governmental entities to require short-term rentals, STR owners, to obtain a business license. Now, if they don't obtain a business license or they violate another municipal ordinance, you can use the listing or offering on an STR website if you've got other additional information that you can put along with it to show that there was a violation. We can't regulate short-term rental websites, but we can request. I'm not sure how helpful this is, but we can request the short-term rental website to take down any violating listings or offerings on their website. They don't have to comply with their request, though. So we could do that before. We can do it now. It's just now in code. So the municipality can provide the county auditor of listings or offerings where a transient room tax on the rental of rooms in hotels, motels. We can provide that to the county auditor if there's evidence that they're using those rooms as short-term rentals. So HB 300, Justin.
All right, HB 300. So this is the big election bill. If you remember, this is the bill that started out saying that we would mail ballots out to everybody, but ballots had to be returned by going to a polling location or to a drop box and showing voter ID. That was the big part of the bill. There's a lot of things that have changed in the bill, and so this is what ultimately has happened. And the big thing I want everyone to remember is this bill is going to be basically implemented in stages. There are things that will be implemented this year. There are things that will be implemented from 2026 to 2029. And then there are things going forward from 2029. If I were you, I would not worry too much about what's going to be implemented in 2029, not just because it is 4 years away, but also because there are 4 legislative sessions between now and then. And I will be shocked if some things do not change between now and then. So here's what you need to know, particularly for this year, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming up. But again, I don't want anyone to get too concerned about what is coming up, because things will change. I'm almost certain before the next municipal election. So what changes this year? One, ballots must be received by the election officer, deposited in a ballot box or drop box, or the person must be in line on or before 8 p.m. on election day. The big change here is ballots have to be received by 8 p.m. on election day. There is the same exception there's been there that if someone is in line by 8 p.m. on election day, they can still vote. That's still there. If you were in line with a sealed ballot, so you can't be standing in line filling out your by mail ballot. But if you have a sealed ballot and you're in line, you'll be able to put that in a box. But ballots will have to be returned by 8 p.m. on election day. We will no longer be relying on the postmark to decide whether or not a ballot shall be counted. We will be relying on when the ballot is received. That is the big change for this year. I will say that is the norm in several other vote by mail states, Oregon, Washington, Colorado. That's what they've been doing for years. So that's there. So do absentee ballots also have to be there by the election date? For military and overseas voters, UOCAVA voters, the official term, they still have their own rules about when those ballots are returned. This bill does nothing to those overseas and military voters. But for other ballots, they do have to be received by 8 p.m. on election day. And then there are some changes to voter identification. I would say they are not huge changes as far as what counts as voter identification, a little bit of clarification, but for most voters, that's going to look the same this year. Next slide, Jared. All right. I think this was okay. So there are also going to be some changes to voter registration forms with a choice. Now, this will be rolled out throughout 2025. The deadline for much of this to be done is the day after the municipal election, but some of the online things will start changing before that, and we could see voter registration forms changed before that as well. But basically, the voter registration form will now contain a choice. There will be a box that you can mark to say, mail me a ballot. There will be a box that you can mark and say, don't mail me a ballot, I will vote in person. If someone opts to have a ballot not mailed to them, then it's that simple. A ballot will not be mailed to them in the future, and they will have to go vote in person. So this year, ballots are still mailed to all active voters unless a voter requests not to receive one. So again, the changes for this year are not vast as far as how the election is run. The big things to remember are if someone requests not to receive a ballot, we won't send them a ballot. And two, those ballots have to be returned for most voters by 8 p.m. on election night. So that's this year. Looking forward, what's going to happen. So 2026 to 2029, we start phasing in some of the changes. Again, ballots mailed to all active voters unless a voter requests not receive one by mail. Voters will start, they'll start having spaces on the return envelope where a voter can provide the last four digits of their driver license or their state ID or the last four of their social security number, along with a signature on the ballot return envelope. A ballot can still be counted if the signature matches, even if the last four digits of the driver's license, state ID, or social security are not put on there. It's really it's time to get people used to putting that on there. It's an extra way to verify who someone is, but a ballot can still be counted if the signature matches, even if the last four digits are not included. Can make a choice to have the ballot mailed or vote in person, and those can be done on the voter reg forms, the online voter reg, when you're renewing your driver license or your state ID, or when voting in person. You could say, hey, I came in person, I want to mark that I want to get this by mail in the future. So that's 2026 to 2029. We'll start phasing in some of those changes. And then let's jump to the last slide here on this. So what happens after 2029? So 4 years from now, things get really different. Ballots will be only mailed to voters who have requested them in the past 8 years and have voted in previous elections. Now, I say this needs clarification because I think it needs clarification, and I assume that will be clarified. But it says who's voted in an election, or if you have not voted in an election in a 2-year time period that contains a general election, then you could not receive a ballot. But the way it's drafted is a little unclear. But basically, if someone has not voted in a general election, you don't have to mail them a ballot. They may have to come vote in person. But again, that's 4 years from now. There's a lot of time to clarify what that looks like. You must present ID to vote at the polls, which is already the law. A little bit changes around that. And then at that point in 2029, return ballots must include the last 4 digits of the driver license or state ID or social security number or a photocopy of certain other forms to be counted if you don't have those primary forms. So yes, starting at that point, we will have to provide those numbers. A couple things in the chat. Does this apply to federal elections also? Yes. This applies to all federal elections and municipal elections going forward. Everything's changing for everybody. And there will be more changes for the 2026 general election than we'll have this year for the 2025 municipal election. Cliff's point in the chat, yes, 8 years aligns with the driver license renewal. So long as every time you renew your driver license, you click the box saying, I would like to get this, get my ballot by mail, you will continue to receive your ballot by mail. So for a lot of voters, there are things built in here to make sure that that doesn't just pass them by. So some changes, big changes this year again, the 8 p.m. deadline. And if someone requests not to receive a ballot by mail, don't mail it to them. But then other changes rolling out going forward for all elections. I would say stay tuned on this one. 4 years is a long time. There's a lot of discussions, I think, to be had about what some of this looks like. And some of the phasing in period is there to help with lessons learned and see if there are things that need to be tweaked. So not massive changes for the election this year, but changes rolling forward, going over the next 4 or 5 years. And I think that's all we have on that one, Jared.
Okay, thank you, Justin. A big part of this legislative session was talking about taxes and fees. And the question is, do you know what that difference is? What we found is many legislators, there are quite a few legislators that do not know the difference. And so as we talk about two bills, both of which did not pass, HB 454 and SB 310, we thought it was important to show the differences here so that you would be able to explain to your legislator, because these issues will likely for sure arise. Will likely arise. So who authorizes a tax and who administers it? For a tax, it's the state and the state tax commission. For a fee, it is the municipality. What is it for? When there's a tax, the revenue goes for general government. No specific individual purposes like a service being provided to someone. When it's a fee is whether there is a service, and because they're receiving the service and getting that specific benefit, they have to pay for that specific benefit in return. And so those types of fees, service fee and regulatory fee, are different than the general revenue for the government. And who pays? Taxes, some property owners, but not all. There are property tax exemptions, various bases that have to pay at different rates. As it relates to a fee, everyone is charged for the service that they are receiving. That service or that fee, though, has to be in relation, a reasonable relationship to the services provided, the benefits received, or the need created. So let's hop right into the first bill that talked about different types of fees. HB 454 discussed three different types: broadband fees, public safety fees, and transportation utility fees. If you have a broadband fee, that general fee cannot be imposed unless, and there's certain exceptions here, if before May 7th, 2025, so if you've already issued a general fee, that has to be repealed no later than July 1st, 2026. However, if you have already issued a bond and that bond is secured by the general fee that you've already imposed, you can pay off that bond, but it cannot be later than 60 days after the bond is paid. And I should say this bill did not pass. So the things that I'm talking about here are things that did not pass and did not go forward. So take it with a grain of salt, but we wanted to have in your mind what may come up very soon, next session, next 2 sessions of what you may see. So summary is, if no bond, it ends no later than July 1st, 2026. If there is a bond, then it ends no later than 60 days after that bond is paid. And again, this did not pass. So these are not laws in place at this point. Public safety fee, if you're a city of a 3rd, 4th, 5th class or town and contract with a political subdivision, that has to be authorized every 3 years. It didn't include volunteer public safety fees, and that would have had to be repealed by July 1st, 2026. Again, this did not pass, and I'll tell you why in just a minute here. This is the one that I really want you to pay attention to, because it is very likely that this will rise again in some sort and fashion. The transportation utility fee, according to this version of this bill, you had to show a reasonable relationship between the transportation utility fee and the services provided to, benefits received by, or the need created by those who pay the transportation utility fee. In the past, there has been some basis on relying on the property size or the ownership of the property. That can no longer be. I should say it is not, this bill did not pass again, but it will likely come up. So if you do have a transportation utility fee, pay attention. If you don't have one but plan on having one, pay attention, because we want it to be as defensible as possible if you move forward with that. The process here is to approve it by ordinance and do a study on what those benefits are, what the services are being provided, and what the need created by those who pay the TUF or the transportation utility fee. That methodology has to include different groups or categories of that transportation utility fee, including residential, commercial, and houses of worship. There would be, if this passed, there would have been an annual review and prepare a report and send that to the state auditor. It would be subject to referendum, expires every 10 years, that transportation utility fee would expire, and those that would have had to comply must have their if they already had a transportation utility fee, they would need to make sure it complies by July 1st, 2026. Now, this is the framework, and there are a lot more things within this bill that sets forward the methodology, the framework, the process that we would advise you to look at. And if you are currently doing a transportation utility fee and don't want to be challenged, we feel like this is a good step forward. Is it required? No. But is it something that will definitely make your transportation utility fee much more defensible? Yes. And some of you have already done that. There are others that may need to go back and look at that and see what they need to do. In response to the House bill, HB 454, the Senate also came forward with their own bill, transportation utility fee amendments, and basically all that it added was that you can't charge a religious organization with a nonprofit status. So there was an exemption. This didn't make it out of, I don't think it even made it out of committee. It may have made it onto the floor, but it ultimately died, did not move forward, and it was silent on public safety and broadband fees. And both of these bills died. And they were kind of pitted against each other, and neither one went forward. This is my plea. Just look at what is in 454, and if you want it to be a little bit more defensible if challenged, then I would look to see what you can adopt there and move forward with.
Jared, can I jump in and just say one final thing on
Yes.
that? I'm going to say the same thing you said. I just want to say it again so everyone catches it. Yeah, if you have a transportation utility fee already, make sure that the process is good. What we've laid out in 454 and worked with the sponsors on is a good process. And to add to that, when we say if defensible challenge, there is certainly a possibility that there is another court case, and that someone's transportation utility fee gets challenged by another entity. And so the better your processes, the better your studies that you do to get to this, the more defensible you will be. And that's going to have impacts not just for your city, but for all cities. So just kind of foot stomping what Jared said there. Look at this. If you've got a good process in place, great. If you feel like your process that you got to may need some cleanup, you may need to look at it again. Then we would encourage you to take a second look at that because there is a very real possibility. I'm not saying it's necessarily likely, but there's a very real possibility that a court case shows up for some city on this one this year.
Thank you, Justin. So now we've got two more bills here. The first bill, I should say, this started in a really, really bad place, basically taking away the attorney-client privilege if the Office of Legislative Auditor General requested privileged documents. And they were privy to that, and it would totally remove the attorney-client privilege as well as the attorney work product privilege, and would have allowed them to obtain those privileged documents. What this now does is it sets up a process by which if the city says we've got privileged documents, they will, in response to a legislative audit, they can submit back to the legislative auditor general a privileged log. This is pretty typical of other discovery methods. Now, if the documents on the privilege log, if OLAG challenges the saying, hey, this is not a privileged document, we want you we want to challenge this, they will provide us with 3 arbiters, and we will get to pick one of those arbiters if done within 3 business days from the time that they provide us those names. If we don't provide that, or if we don't pick one, then they get to go ahead and pick one after those 3 business days. If both parties, so both parties will split the cost of the arbitrator, and unless there's bad faith of the municipality, then the municipality has to pay the full cost of the arbitrator. In other words, if the municipality knows it's not a privileged document, that it's clear it's not a privileged document, and they are claiming it's a privileged document, and the arbitrator finds that there was bad faith on behalf of the municipality, we pay the full cost of the arbitrator. All documents are reviewed by the arbitrator in private and cannot be released or used any other way. And so if it's found that it's not a privileged document, obviously then it's released to the Legislative Auditor General, and they can use it in their audit. It also provides that if entities share privileged information with the arbitrator or with OLAG on their own behalf, they do not waive privilege as it relates to other individuals or entities that want to see those documents. So if there's a lawsuit going on, then the other party can't say, well, you shared it with OLAG, now it's no longer privileged because it's outside of the attorney-client privilege, and they would no longer be able to do that because of this provision in this law. So is it perfect? No. Is it the way that we would ultimately want it to be? No. But is it in a lot better place than it was? Absolutely. We wouldn't have had the attorney-client privilege or attorney work product privilege if we weren't able to push back on this and get some changes. So the next one that was kind of companion with the SB 154 was this SJR4, and the initial bill removed again, completely removed the attorney-client privilege. Through later substituted bills pushing back on this, they removed those provisions, and it just left the only provisions that it now relates to attorney-client privilege is saying that you don't waive the privilege if you give the information to the Office of Legislative Auditor General. So we, in the end, didn't have any concerns with this. It does change some criminal considerations as it relates to a recent Supreme Court case, as it relates to guilty pleas and the timing of those and when those can be made and when those can be withdrawn. But as far as the attorney-client privilege, we feel like that's still safe and secure and is under the same process. So so that ends the bills that we plan on covering today. But we do want to make you aware of this. Over the last few years, actually, when we receive feedback from you, we're able to, on some of those issues, be able to look at that and move that forward on those certain issues that need to be addressed. And so we want to get your feedback, any feedback that you have in things that you would like to see. Now, obviously, the legislative session is quite a ways away, not far enough away, but so if you've got any things that you would like to be brought up, please share that with us. These were things that were brought up in past spring trainings and interim discussions that ended up in bills, and you need to be aware of that. So that's kind of where we're at. And as far as our contact information, if you have any additional questions, I don't think there are other questions unless I'm told differently by Megan or others that we haven't answered.
No, we've got everything covered. Oh, one more just popped up. Is there still any concern that HB 533 might return next session? Split of Salt Lake County would be interesting in hearing on that next time. The quick answer is we don't know. Obviously, that was one that came out and didn't go anywhere. It's one that has come up every few years, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that come out. But that one didn't go anywhere this year, so we'll watch and see if anything comes from that.
Okay. With that, I think we'll sign off. Thank you for, oh, we've got a few more comments coming in. Thank you,
See here.
Todd.
So yeah, there was some direction with state code and library boards and directors. Yeah, I'll have to go back and remind myself exactly where that went. But yeah, it's one we can certainly talk about during the interim. I'll add that one to the list because I cannot remember exactly where that discussion went. Yeah, Aaron, I remember that. I had discussions with Cam about that one. So yeah, we'll put that one back on the list because, like I say, I vaguely remember the conversation, but a decade ago before session, I don't remember all the specifics.
Okay.
Okay, Jared, I think we're good.
Thank you. Okay. See y'all later.
Thanks, everyone.